Today's video is going to be the first part of a two-part, maybe more if you want, series on Love is Blind Season 7. I am super late to the party, but I'm a little bit glad for that, simply because I kind of think you do not get a full scope of the situation until after the reunion. And even after the reunion, we want to see a little bit of the online discourse that goes on. And then I feel like we're probably going to get as close to the truth of the matter on these situations as humanly possible. And I do want to give the contestants on the show that opportunity to kind of truly tell their side of the story, because at the end of the day, it is a reality show. We know they edit things, but to be fair, you can't edit material that isn't there to edit together. I just don't buy the story when people say it's all editing. I just don't think it is. At least not in the Love is Blind universe. I have never found that to be the case. Let me just say though, also, typically when I do these types of videos, I would at least try to hide the fact that I'm reading directly from a script, but I'm not even gonna try today. I'm super tired, and Aunt Flo came to town and she makes everything really hard. So I'm probably gonna be looking directly at the script. Let me through it. So even though I did wait to make this video, and as much as I wish I could have been chopping it up with you guys on YouTube the entire time the series was coming out, I am glad I waited, but I do want it to be known that I knew these relationships were going to be doomed from the start. I did know. Most of the relationships on the show probably are, because the show is essentially now a social media influencer launching pad. I am not bothered by that, but I believe in calling a spade at the end of the day. I think some people come to the show open to marriage, like Marissa, but I would argue that she is entirely too open to it. And then I think there are people who are going on the show that know full well they have no intent of getting married whatsoever, and I think Ramses is a really good example of that. A few people might find love, and even fewer still might find happy, successful marriages, but those people who do find love or find marriage are gonna find it because they came into this situation happy, healthy people all on their own, and that is true of love and marriage in the real world as well. Speaking of marriage, let's talk about my biases, and what I hope to accomplish in these videos. I'm discussing all these relationships with the understanding that the people in question want to get married. I mean, that's the whole nature of the show, so I think that's a fair judgment to make. And I'm also going to be offering you guys advice in this video, or at least some words of wisdom or whatever, with the understanding that you want to get married as well. I can't really advise you guys how to date without marriage as the end goal, because all the advice I'm going to give you is going to be dependent on husband material, boyfriend material, sneaky link material. I got nothing for you, but I can talk to you about husband material all day. A lot of women are struggling to find their partner. They want to get married, they want family, they want long-term commitment, but they're struggling with it. I'm mostly going to be critiquing the women in these relationships, and it's not because I think that men are never at fault and it's all about the women and what they need to do. It's more about taking ownership and taking inventory of the mistakes that we keep making as women in our love lives and our relationships. I feel like far too many women get caught up in these echo chambers that are not serving them. This might be a splash of cold water, but it's not intended to attack or poo-poo on Marissa at all, but she and you and I can do nothing with information we don't have and cannot change things we do not acknowledge. That's what kind of the point of these videos is. So I'm going to be looking at these relationships, like I just said, through the understanding that marriage is the goal, but I'm also going to be looking at it through the lens not only of compatibility and core wounding issues, but also through the lens of masculine and feminine energy. You guys have heard me talk about it very many times on my channel. I consider myself like a mid-tier feminine energy expert, mid to low tier. If you guys want the full skinny, like my favorite resource on the internet for masculine and feminine energy teachings is Everyday Starlet here on YouTube. I'll link her down below. Tell her I said hi and ask her to be my friend. But yeah, I'm coming at this from a lot of different angles. One of them is masculine and feminine energy. And to be honest with you guys, outside of all the other red flags I saw pretty much immediately with these two, I could tell that the polarity was going to be an issue with Marissa and Ramses, because it was definitely off from the beginning, and I think that showed up and was a consistent issue in their relationship. For frame of reference, I will be using masculinity to describe traits such as dedication, discipline, structure, mission oriented, protection, provision, reason, and logic. And as it comes to the feminine, I will be using words like creativity, emotion, sensuality, playfulness, vulnerability, and connection. Neither of these energies, masculine or feminine, are better than the other. They just complement each other very, very well. And when each person in a relationship can stay comfortably in their core energy, that is when the real magic happens. That being said, not all men are masculine, not all women are feminine. They just tend to be more often than not, however. I think this is an important thing to discuss with Marissa and Ramses because I could tell right from the beginning that both of them, Marissa and Ramses, equally have some pretty negative opinions on masculinity as a whole. Ramses wants to distance himself from those things as a man, which should have been red flag number one, to be honest. Marissa seems to talk a lot about how she doesn't want a traditionally masculine man. And what I think Marissa hasn't realized is that it's not about the levels of masculinity in her men. It's about the fact that Marissa can't tell when a man is playing in her face and doesn't actually want her. Either that or she's just willfully delusional. I don't know. So Marissa, you will see my thesis of this video, and I'll say it 100 times, I'm sure. Marissa seems very confused to me. Despite much of what Marissa believes or wants to present to us, she is much more traditionally minded than she would like to take ownership of. And while I'm not saying she needs to like run off and be a trad wife or anything like that, I'm not advocating for any type of extreme here. She, at the very least, like all women who want marriage, need to get real with themselves about that and be very, very okay with the fact that that's what they want so that they can move accordingly. Marissa kind of has a little bit of cool girl syndrome going on. She wants to seem really breezy and like, no, I'm not like other girls. That's not what I want. She's not breezy, and that's exactly what she wants. The next video will be about Hannah and Nick and the gender war propaganda machine that I believe Love is Blind has become. I feel you can see evidence of a particular point of view that the show holds as far back as the season with Zeneb and Cole. Side note, justice for Cole. I will always say it. I find myself concerned with what happened this season from an integrity standpoint as far as it pertains to Hannah and Nick, but also I'm concerned for women who want marriage and love from a man but behave and act an awful lot like Hannah. Maybe not to the extreme of Hannah, though I would argue it's a lot more common than any of us are willing to really openly talk about. But at the very least, I think in the next video, I kind of want to discuss how the whole down with the patriarchy thing can bleed into your romantic life and as a result set you up for failure immediately. So if you want to see that video, make sure that you're subscribed. I think there's been a huge misrepresentation through social media about the state of the average man and the average woman and kind of the issues that are on their hearts and minds. Honestly, I could seriously go on and on about that. If you want to see that, let me know. Stay tuned for part 2, like I said. And if you want me to do a video on all the couples, like this video, because if I get this video to 700, I'll do one on every single couple and read them to absolute filth. So make sure to subscribe. Let's do this. Let's start first with talking about Ramses. In many ways, Ramses seems, at least in the context of the show, it could just very well be kind of that awareness of being recorded and watching everything that you say, but Ramses seems kind of vacant to me. I could be misreading what his friends might quantify and qualify as laid back or chill, but he sometimes comes across as just like flat out aloof and indifferent. Like I don't really feel like you see him emote very much. There seems to be no real connection between what he says and how he feels about what he is saying. And again, this could be interpreted as calm, but I think he is probably actually a very avoidant person, at least when it comes to romantic relationships. I mean, even at the reunion, Marissa calls him out at one point for being quiet and getting some skin in the game when everybody is ganging up on Nick. I believe her words were something like, "Of course, Ramses, you're being quiet like always," or something like that, which leads me to believe that she experienced her fair share of him refusing to be open and communicate about his authentic feelings on stuff. Maybe in the beginning, this came off as a green flag to Marissa because in my opinion, a lot of what she seems to connect with Ramses and the pods over is this very kind of like anti-bro mindset he seems to embody. Ramses is not a bro. And I suppose Marissa is overcorrecting. And I honestly think she's overcorrecting in a lot of areas of her life, to be honest with you. So Marissa could very easily be misinterpreting his passivity or detachment for introspection or thoughtfulness. Perhaps his aloofness and kind of big time black cat energy is exactly what does it for her. It's what she finds attractive whether she realizes it or not. Maybe Marissa thinks she can swap her type without swapping her type. If you get turned on by a guy that acts indifferent to you, it will not be easy to identify when it's manifesting differently from what you were previously exposed to. That's what I mean when I say it's like she thinks I'm just not gonna get with a bro this time, and that's what's gonna make things different. The polarity is off between Ramses and Marissa because I believe Ramses is in his feminine energy and Marissa wants to be in hers. I have dated a similar guy only once, and I, like Marissa, thought that story was going to end a little bit differently than it did because he was so different from a simply surface level perspective. I historically go for the exact opposite of Ramses usually, and I married the exact opposite for sure. I actually do like a bro. I do not like an asshole, however, and I think Marissa and lots of women like Marissa who run into situations with a dude like Ramses are confused and think that bro, Giga Chad, that type of dude, lifted truck, blah, 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 I am man, hear me roar. They tend to think that that is automatically synonymous with asshole, just like how a lot of people think masculinity is automatically associated with toxic, but that is just not the case. And I think she believed that was going to save her this time. Like I said, overcorrecting her type without changing her type. I wouldn't recommend women date a man like Ramses for several reasons, but that's because I don't think most women are going to be happy with a feminine energy cord man, whether he's a bro or a male feminist. There is nothing wrong with feminine energy cord men. I think that they are way better suited for masculine energy cord women. Marissa, I believe, is very much so in her wounded masculine a lot. I think it's like her defense mechanism. It's her shield, but I think she truly is very feminine cord. And it's exhausting for women to have to be in their masculine energy as a protective mechanism all of the time. It's part of what throws that polarity off and can be very draining and exhausting for women over long periods of time. From a polarity standpoint, didn't see this working from the jump. But let me just say, the male feminist thing should have never been some kind of automatic green flag. You can have whatever worldview or perspective on politics that you want, but you would be foolish to think that just because someone says they believe the exact same thing that you do, that means they are automatically good people. While I do think it's important to have some shared worldviews or perspectives with your partner, there's some ways that can get a little sticky for us if we're not actually looking at the contents of a person's character outside of just the things that they say. Because number one, just because somebody says they believe something doesn't mean that they believe it. Also, just because somebody says they believe something, it doesn't mean they believe it for the same reasons that you believe it. And, you know, we always have to be very careful of getting a little too high on our own supply. You know, everyone thinks they're the good guy. So if you think that your beliefs and your worldview is the objective right and you are of moral authority simply because of what you believe or what you say you believe, you might tend to think that someone who says the same things is also equally moral and righteous as you are, and that can kind of leave you to be a sitting duck, to be honest with you. And it also doesn't mean that even if they say they believe the same things that you believe, that they aren't still human with flaws and misgivings and that can be fallible and screw up. Like, there's so much more that you guys should be looking at besides like, do they say the things that I say? You know what I mean? So that being said, I really did not understand at the gate why people looked at the way that Ramses presents himself, or the fact that he says things like, she holds space for my vulnerability, that it means he's guaranteed to fall in love with her and see this thing through. I don't think Ramses was ever going to get married on this show. And Marissa, I think, knew that as well. I think that's why she got so triggered at the reunion about Nick, for example. She took such issue with the idea that Nick might not be here to fall in love and get married and, you know, ride off into the sunset together. Like, she was so triggered at that, and she just took all her anger at Ramses on to Nick. But I think that's because she, like everyone else who was shocked about what Ramses ended up doing, fell again for that presentation of a different kind of man, and she felt duped. Although, as we get into it, all the evidence was there. This video is already long, so I'm really gonna have to just start reading straight off this thing. Maybe I should blog, then I wouldn't have to put makeup on to just read something I wrote down to you. Part of the issue here is that Ramses is all about Ramses, which I think was evident from the start. And you know, I'm not trying to say that it's okay for Ramses to be all about Ramses. He is entirely too grown for any of that mess. I just think that all of his selfishness was kind of on full display the whole time. And from my perspective, it was clear that Marissa was projecting a lot of what she wanted to see onto him the whole time. If we're honest, I think a lot of us can look at our past missteps with love and relationships and see that we've done the same thing. And it's one of those things where when you look back in life and in love, it was all there the whole time. Just because a man says things like mental load and empathy does not make him the automatic superior man. And I just want to say as a side note that this season really showed me personally how much brain rot people are walking around with, and these like Twitter comment section talking point conversation things I saw so much of. Just, it concerned me, man. That's why this video is so long and why the next one's gonna be so bombastic, because I'm concerned for, I shouldn't look at a reality show and be like, this is a sign of where people really are in life. But I see too much of this discourse in my real life, on the internet, on reality TV. I really do think this is like taking over people's brains a little too much. It's brain rot, IRL. A lot of the stuff that Marissa and Ramses were talking about, like for example, my empathy, I have so much empathy. I side-eye people when they're super expositional in that way in any capacity. People who are super declarative about what they have to offer and who they are make me nervous, because it really feels like a show me, don't tell me situation. And I understand the pods, that's kind of difficult, but even still, for your own personal benefit, I would be a little bit suspicious of people who are quick to be, like I said, so declarative about their best qualities. It should be a data point at the very least when people are so quick to talk about their empathy. Empathy especially. I don't meet a whole lot of people who talk about empathetic they are that aren't actual pieces of shit. And the funny thing is, it turns out that Mr. Empathy Ramses had quite a few empathy blind spots of his own the entire time on the show. So I differ a little bit from a lot of people who were upset about Ramses. I do not think he is actually a wolf in sheep's clothing. I think that Ramses is just so deep in his feminine energy that he hot wires connections with women the same way that women do with each other, which is through talking. Women fall in love and stay in love more often than not with their ears. It's why I think the women in these shows are kind of at a disadvantage, to be honest with you, because they get to hear all these nice things these men are saying, but the men aren't actually really put in positions where they have to demonstrate that they are who they say they are, or that they want the things they say they want. It's really just about how well they can run their mouths. And from a polarity standpoint, the masculine is all about doing. Men show you they want you. They don't tell you. It's not that they won't tell you, because they'll tell you whatever you want to hear, but you should never hang your hat on that. And the show, like I said, can kind of set women up for failure in that respect. You really just have to always look at a man. What he says needs to just be taken with a grain of salt, and you always need to be asking yourself, what is he doing? Why men like Tyler and Ramses can get women on the show. They are very feminine cord, and women give them the benefit of the doubt because the women in question look at this as a sign of like, he's so in touch with his feelings, or finally a man who knows how to communicate. Women have to go on the show and in real life fully healed, totally aware of their blind spots regarding how malleable and easily manipulated they are, which we will go into as far as Marissa is concerned momentarily. And they need to be ready to ask the tough questions. Marissa didn't do any of these things. Ramses doesn't really actually seem to say much, and I almost feel like he speaks primarily when spoken to, and it's almost always like the most fence riding, Switzerland, saying nothing when you say anything kind of talk. He kind of talks like a politician in a way to me, and the one time that he really was direct, which was like the military conversation, he actually seems really judgmental and unfair to Marissa, which is not a fun characteristic to have in a partner to begin with. Much of what he says outside of that conversation is like, yeah, I agree. I want to respect that. I get that. It's mostly just like affirming that he hears you, not a whole lot of information on where he actually stands, except, like I said, with the military conversation, which we'll get into in a minute. Marissa is really fond of all the platitudes that he made and the male fashion Tumblr influencer thing of it all. She just isn't really listening when he does show her who he is, and she kind of projects the rest of it. That's also evident in how hard she took it on the show, in my opinion. And my heart does go out to her. However, I'm just pointing out that she saw a whole lot of meaning and potential and a future with him when I'm really not super sure what that was based on, if it wasn't just a combination of, like I said, his kind of empty platitudes and then her filling in the blanks for herself. The rest of everything else she just created, she projected. It's just kind of some fantasy that she was unfortunately dating the whole time, because it was all there, and I'm going to show you where it was. So there's a bit of a discussment that Marissa and Ramses get into about the stress of wedding planning, and Marissa, you know, in the context of this conversation, tells him that it would be important to her for him to get her mother a wedding gift. What Marissa is saying and what she needs are two different things here. Saying, I don't want a man who doesn't share the mental load, is just a feminist talking point that she is hiding her hurt feelings behind. Marissa doesn't know how to communicate many of her needs and fears in her relationship with Ramses without spouting something that we've probably heard online. The two of them are like a walking Twitter comment section, and it gets exhausting after a while to listen to. What's underneath that, what she is trying to communicate, albeit poorly, is I need you to show up for me. She desires to feel secure in her relationship with Ramses. That's ultimately what this is about. She wasn't seeing Ramses acting like a person in love because he wasn't. So instead of looking at the lack of him being in his healthy masculine and pursuing her as a red flag, she tried to rationalize this with these weird buzzwordy things. Like, it's not because he's not into me like that, it's because patriarchy and mental load. Ramses was never getting married. He hasn't thought this through at all. We don't even know why Ramses broke up with her, if you really think about it. He said in the show that it was family and ex-wife stuff, and then on the reunion, he said it's because she's exhausting. Like, which is it? Perhaps it's a little bit of both. I don't know. Either explanation is acceptable, and he's totally entitled to decide he doesn't want to be with someone, obviously. My point is that even when it comes down to something as simple as why is this ending, he cannot stand firm in his explanation. It vacillates and seems to have been something he was only going to communicate when forced to do so. Healthy masculine men who want to get married, which are exactly and only the type of men that you want to be with, will tell you. They will let you go and stand firm, and while they will let you go, before they're going to drag you around, wasting both of your time. They're not fearful of doing what they need to do. They're not fearful of having these hard conversations. Ramses is avoidant. Masculine men aren't avoidant, and men who want you sure as hell are not avoidant. Ramses also doesn't seem to want anything traditional, and I don't know where anyone would get the idea that he does. In fact, many people who were shocked that he turned out to be this way are the same people who praised him for being so non-traditional in the first place. He uses his initial conversations with Marissa in the pods to get very pointedly distanced from traditional masculinity. Lots of women, especially ones who have distilled all their issues with love and men and relationships down to men equal bad, see this as a green flag, and they really shouldn't. You want a healthy masculine man as a husband because that discipline, focus, dedication to something bigger than himself are the exact things that make a man a good husband and father. Those are what I'm going to call traditional things. Husbands, fathers, wives, mothers, because they are traditional things. But to make the conversation easier for the rest of the video, that's what I'm referring to when I say traditional things. Masculine men tend to want those things, and you shouldn't give them to any man who isn't. A man to his core must be called to protect and provide before you give him access to your body in any shape, way, fashion, or form, and certainly before you give him marriage and children. It has to be something that you have no role in kind of teasing or stoking out of him. It just has to be who he is in all areas of his life, but especially when it comes to love and relationships. Ramses was in no way hiding the fact that he is not a traditional man, and outside of this show, you know, kind of forcing you to have conversations about marriage and that kind of being the point of the show. Outside of that, I really don't know where Marissa got the idea that traditional anything was what she was signing up for with him. I think that because Ramses is saying what she wants to hear, things that make her feel like she's safe with him, at least more so than she would be safe with like a masculine bro type. She's missing all the signs that he's not in this because she doesn't know how to tell when it's not right. Per the wedding planning / mental load argument, the fight, like I said, wasn't actually about the wedding planning or the mental load. Marissa could sense that based on how he handled certain things that he was a flight risk. I don't think he was showing up for her in any real way, to be honest with you. I think she needed to feel secure in the relationship, so she was kind of giving him like a test. The present for her mom being the test. I think she recognized that he was going to fail this test, and she was kind of trying to force him not to, which you just should never ever do with a man, honestly. Let him show you on his own who he is and what he wants. Because, you know, at the end of the day, I think that if he was showing up for her in any other real measurable way, the present for her mom would have not been as big of a deal as it was. For instance, my husband is super masculine, and I don't mean in the bro-y way at all. I'm talking about it from the perspective that I discussed in the beginning. Dedicated, committed, disciplined, hardworking, protector, provider in that sense. And as a result, he is an acts of service guy. Most masculine men will be, because acts of service is a doing thing and masculine men are doers. But anyway, he goes out of his way every single day and has since I met him to make my life as easy as humanly possible. I don't really have to worry about anything outside of like what the world brings to my front door. My life with him has been very, very easy. I can truly count on him, rely on him, and if that man says he's gonna do something, you just might as well consider it done. You know, if I put myself in this situation with him, let's inject myself and my husband into this exact dynamic. If I came to him and I was like, well, I know you're working like 50 hours a week to pay for this damn wedding, and you do X, Y, and Z for us, and I've never filled up my own gas tank or whatever, but also get my mom a gift. That would be dumb and unfair, but Ramses is not Marissa's husband. Like what I just described to you, how my husband is, that's your husband. When your man is like that, that is your husband. And Marissa's mother said nothing but an entire word when she told Ramses at the reunion that had they stayed together, Marissa would have carried that relationship on her back. She was not joking, because Ramses doesn't want Marissa that way. Let me just bring this on home in case I didn't make it clear enough. You shouldn't bring these stupid internet talking points like mental load and emotional labor into your relationship, because first of all, men and women have different skill sets and priorities, and individuals have various ways of handling pressure or the day-to-day minutia of life. But since feminism and non-gender conformity seems to be at the forefront of how they think a successful relationship would look based on everything they both have said, Marissa is now frustrated that all the platitudes that he offered her aren't lining up with the reality that makes her feel safe in this relationship. Because honestly, these buzzwords really aren't the issue in male-female dynamics anyway, in my opinion. But since, in the context of these conversations, he continues to say what she wants to hear, the boyfriend politically correct speech of it all. Yeah, I get that. Empathy, energy, evolving. She stays focused on these words, not the actions, or lack thereof in his case. Marissa is feminine cord. She wants to feel secure and safe. She doesn't want to lead this relationship. She doesn't want to be the one pursuing him. She doesn't want to be the one setting the tone or making all the moves. The feminine never does. The feminine is about receiving. But that's what she means when she talks about mental load. But she, like a lot of women, think matters of the heart can be easily intellectualized, like in a TikTok think piece or whatever. Ramses and Marissa have the lethal combination of being out of polarity and him not wanting to be with her the way that she wants to be with him. So instead of doing the hard work of figuring out what she wants and accepting the truth about Ramses, she defers to her masculine energy shield, which says, think your way through this, analyze it, buzzwords, intellectualize it. No woman has ever argued her way into a man loving her. It doesn't work like that. She's outsourced all the hard work of getting to the bottom of all of these problems that she has in her romantic relationships to the patriarchy. And since Ramses parrots back to her the exact same talking points, she thinks Boom! This is a sure thing. Many people felt the birth control conversation was the first true sign of him not being a good partner, but it started with the military conversation for me. Personal bias around this topic at hand aside, I did find it interesting that Ramses shared with Marissa that he had conflicting feelings about growing up in the church. He has many reasons as to why he left the faith. He even left his last marriage, according to him, over his choice to distance himself from the church. And despite whatever happened or what he came to believe about the church that caused him to basically walk away from his former life and identity in that respect, he won't outright denounce the people or the experience as a whole. When Marissa says essentially the same thing about her time in the military, Ramses cannot hear this. He is full-blown looking down his nose at her. Marissa, as a feminine cord woman, wants to use these very human emotions of confliction and confusion surrounding their past value systems to bond. Ramses could not observe Marissa in her confliction and confusion around this issue and be the strong, stable, masculine presence that he needed to be for her around her issue. And unless Marissa was going to denounce her military time entirely, she was never going to gain favor with Ramses here. The more significant issue here is indeed a major misalignment in values. But if Ramses actually wanted to be with Marissa, and if he wanted to be with Marissa and was in his masculine energy, like I said, when she described her struggle with her past, he would have been able to be present and hold that space for her. But since Ramses didn't love Marissa and was never getting married to her, his brain didn't go there. It went to judging her and playing the who's the better person card. And word to the wise, people who look at things as black and white as Ramses does in this moment will do that over the entirety of your relationship with them, no matter what kind of relationship it is. They don't want to see your humanity or their own or the nuance of a situation. They find themselves to just be the objectively more moral and virtuous person at all times, and good luck with that. The birth control conversation wasn't as crazy to me upon second inspection. Again, everyone was shocked that he felt this way because it bumps up against the male feminist of it all. But again, this is why I don't get why you would outsource the way you think about life in this way. He's still a man. And also, you know, feminism is like equality. And if a woman came in here talking about what she needs to enjoy sex, all y'all would be like, as she should, a woman's pleasure. Ramses being a male feminist or non-traditional masculine man doesn't divorce him from his preferences. It's just that, like with the military conversation, if you only see things in this extreme black and white, get on code or get out kind of way, this stuff might shock or surprise you. Here's what it did illuminate for me. Ramses doesn't want to get married and have kids. Maybe ever, because this man is 35 years old. Did y'all know that he is 35 years old? And Ramses is asking a 32, at the time of filming this, Marissa was 32. He is asking a 32-year-old woman to wait up to 5 years for kids. 35-year-old men who don't want kids are a red flag to me anyway. Any man not wanting them is kind of a red flag. Don't get me wrong. Dudes like Tyler who are trying to create their own basketball team or another thing. But in the context of a long-term commitment, it should be a red flag to you as well. Especially if you want those things, and Marissa, who we will get into in a minute, does. She has expedited her timeline, in fact, since their time in the pods. I think in the pod, she was a lot more like, she kind of agreed with the 5 years or whatever. But once they get out, she kind of starts having a very like, F it, let's just see what happens. And women who don't want kids and who don't want kids with a guy right now tend not to say things like, let the chips fall where they may. I think what was genuinely telling in that conversation wasn't, he's just like every other misogynistic man. It was, this fool doesn't want to commit. Not now, not ever. Because had Ramses been like, hell yeah, let's see what happens, Marissa would have felt very safe and comfortable in the context of how serious he takes their relationship and their future. And it would have been an indication to her that he wants one with her to begin with, a future that is. And before you all say, just because a man wants to put a baby in you doesn't mean he wants you. Correct. But that's why you marry before you carry, always, number one. And Marissa and Ramses are engaged. Now, it is a farce for TV, but it is engagement nonetheless. Marissa would be correct, as would you, in assuming the man who says he loves you and wants to marry you should also be okay with wanting to have kids with you. If that's what you both have expressed that you want, and honestly should definitely be okay with the timeline being shorter than 5 years if the woman in question is 32, but Ramses is still a child. He has no masculinity to speak of. So the idea of like the sacrifice that comes with having a wife and kids is not appealing to him. So he doesn't care if Marissa's fertility continues to decline aggressively over the next 5 years. Ramses is about Ramses the same way all feminine men are. Again, masculinity wants to provide, protect. It's disciplined. It answers to a higher calling than himself. He is beholden to something higher than himself. And he's not so much focused on like his need to express himself and find his joy. Side note, women can still have babies well into their 30s. I'm not trying to fearmonger you or anything like that. I had my son at 37. I just don't recommend this plan. There's no guarantees. Your fertility absolutely does dwindle as you get older. It's not impossible, but you just don't get forever to make kids the way men do. So don't let them have you out here waiting 5 years when at the end of that 5 years, you're going to be looking 40 dead in the eye. Do not recommend it. These men, do not let them waste your time like that. But the beginning of the end for them is when Ramses starts talking about his doubts. He doubts whether or not they should get married because according to him, Mr. Empathy over here just realized how hard the divorce was on his ex-wife. I don't buy this. I think the most likely thing that happened is, based on everything he said, his traditionally minded family is probably coming to him like, oh, I'm sorry. You mean to tell me you left your wife and now you want to get married to a woman you barely know after a month on a TV show? Have you learned nothing? I imagine the conversation was something like that. Again, it seems like his family's probably pretty traditional. Marissa's mom did, however, in my opinion, call him out perfectly as it pertained to his narrative surrounding his first marriage. The way that he would talk about it, it was always like, I just wanted to do what was best for my ex-wife and her happiness and her faith. Like really, again, talking like a politician about his divorce. And when Marissa's mom was basically like, oh, so you're just the good guy here. I would love to just like watch her commentary on like a Love is Blind DVD, just ripping everybody apart and calling everybody out. It would be amazing. But anyway, I think Ramses editorializes and PC speaks his way through everything. Kind of sounds like what Ramses is saying, like because of his kindness and his empathy and his virtuousness and his ability to see what his wife really needed at the time and his willing to sacrifice himself on the altar of divorce for her happiness. He couldn't even conceive that it would hurt her in the process. Like, I don't know, again, with the empathy thing. The weight of his decisions and choices just don't seem to resonate with him at all. And that's assuming he's even being honest about any of this. To me, it's all BS. Ramses doesn't want to get married and Ramses doesn't love Marissa. Ramses is not direct. He doesn't have that masculine mission focus thing I was talking about. And I would be willing to bet that many of these conversations around Ramses's doubt about her would have started with Ramses being kind of weird and distant towards Marissa, and then Marissa kind of having to come in and be like, what's going on? And then and only then would he say his doubts. Like he wants to be approached. That's what I meant when I say it's almost like he doesn't really speak unless he's spoken to, because he's in his feminine. The feminine receives, the feminine is pursued. Marissa should have dipped the first time he expressed his doubts, and ladies, you should too. Men have to be sure about you. Women, I don't know. I think that women, because of the nature of our emotions and how we change so much over even the course of a month, and our feelings tend to go in tandem with those hormonal changes we go through our cycle. I think it's a lot more possible that a woman can express doubts about a man but not actually have them. If a man expresses doubts about you, he has them. He don't want you. Men need to be sure. Absolutely sure. If they're not 1,000% sure, let him go. That's why I don't recommend women do on again, off again relationships, because if he really wanted you, he would not risk you going anywhere because he sees you as valuable and he thinks other men will as well. I wasn't surprised that he turned out the way that he did. It tracked from start to finish. I don't think this breakup was as simple as him being a fake feminist. I believe Marissa actually did have a lot to do with this, and to deny that is to deny Marissa any autonomy in this situation as a woman. But just because I don't think Marissa should feel as bamboozled as she does, doesn't mean I would ever tell you guys to deal with or date a man like Ramses either. Believe it or not, we haven't even started talking about Marissa, so let's do that really quick, and I'm gonna speed through this because my voice hurts and I'm tired. Marissa changed for me a bit after the reunion. I feel like we saw another side to her. We saw more of her complete and total lack of judgment and discernment on display through her allegiance to Hannah, who she admitted was even mean to her as well. Give me a break. But we saw that her high energy is not just saved for bubbly moments, it takes on many forms. So that being said, I do hate that Marissa's heart was as broken as it was. It's the worst, and I don't wish it on anyone. But Marissa was not faultless here, and again, to say that she is to deny her agency and her ability to make different choices in the future. So don't think I'm trying to pile on Marissa. Like I said, we all have room to grow and change. It's how we're gonna get what we want at the end of the day. Marissa, from what she said over the course of the show, has had a radical change in worldview, which is fine. However, some things that should have come from that change didn't, which leads me to believe it's somewhat superficial. It's performative and more about sticking it to the man than changing and growing as a person. And that's really based on how she describes how she saw the world and herself through the context of the military, through the guys that she dated, versus who she says she is now. And that's why I'm pressing on this. When you do things with the sole intention of pissing someone else off or sticking it to them, you're still controlled by them. If you really want to distance yourself from something, you become very pro your stuff, not especially anti theirs. To do things out of spite means you are still controlled. It means it's still on your mind. It means it's still at the forefront. It means it's still not coming, the call is not coming from inside the house in this situation. It's all external. That's what I mean when I say it's performative. When you change your political alignment, your religion, whatever, there's usually a reason. You may have learned something that you cannot abide by, or saw something that kind of laughed in the face of what you thought was true, or realized maybe you're kind of a hypocrite in some areas of your life and they don't really align with your beliefs, and you kind of want to get that under control and get them closer to each other, what you say and what you do, that is, living more in integrity. You know, whatever the reason, ostensibly something happened to make you change. And usually once you wake up to the reality of what you thought was right or wrong, you realize, not only am I capable of being so very wrong about so many things, but also I'm a lot more susceptible to manipulation and coercion than I thought I was. Now, why don't I dig deeper into that and figure out why this was able to work on me the way that it did? Let me get my act together so it doesn't happen again. And I just don't think Marissa has done any of this work. Marissa is really susceptible to manipulation and guilt because of her people pleaser personality. I don't think she's really examined why her old ways of thinking are out of alignment with who she is and what she wants, or how. To avoid falling for BS again, she just started using words like cishet and gender norms. Marissa is confused. Like I've said, I think she is swapping her usual type out because she believes that relationships are as simple as, well, I didn't get results with the MAGA bros, so I'm gonna try it with the male feminist. It just kind of seems like, at least when it pertains to her romantic life and this worldview change and all that kind of stuff, that just, this is where it's kind of falling flat. I can't speak to any other arena, but here there seems to be a little bit of confusion going on. Marissa seems kind of naive, like I said, confused, and focused on the wrong markers of somebody's integrity and kindness. Like I said, usually when you change worldviews, you realize there's way more to what makes a person a good person. At the very least, you learn that there's far more nuance and gray area on things that you once thought were very simple and black and white. It should make it easier for you to tell when someone is playing in your face, no matter what they are playing with you about. At least it should. It should. The lessons to be learned in such a radical shift shouldn't be as simple as the buzzwords that you say now. It should be a better understanding of how human beings work. But like I said, she has outsourced all of this to feminism and down with the patriarchy. It's why she fell for Ramses's BS to begin with. So Marissa tells Ramses in the pods about being in law school and how demanding being in law school is, and then how demanding her career is probably going to be as a result of her choice to be a lawyer. She would be very open to having a house husband, and of course Ramses is down. But when Ramses and Marissa are with her mother, Marissa's mom is real quick to say to Ramses that Marissa wants to stay home with her babies. Now, had Marissa been like, no mom, what I meant was only until they're 5, or for a little while, or I'll do part-time. She didn't qualify any of it. She didn't correct her. She just smiled and nodded, which is what I mean when I say Marissa is confused. I'm not saying that Marissa shouldn't be able to have her law career and that Marissa needs to stay home, but whatever she wants, she needs to be 10 1000% sure, and either she's changed her mind and hasn't told her mom, or she doesn't mean it when she says she wants a house husband, or she doesn't know what she wants. It's too much confusion. How can you possibly move through the world dating and knowing when you have found the right man and found your husband if you don't even know what your standards and terms are for a long-term relationship? I mean, for all I know, she said everything that she said to Ramses to people please and kind of mirror Ramses, because again, she's such a people pleaser, but it just speaks to the spirit of confusion that I keep telling you that I see in Marissa. Marissa takes on a lot of external markers of all things non-traditional, you know, super cool and anti-establishment, but still wants a traditional life. She still wants a semi-traditional, at least. Like it sounds like at least at some point wanted to get married, have kids, and stay home with them. That's about as traditional as you can get. I just think that she's getting precisely what she is paying for with Ramses, because she isn't honest about the side of her that, despite all the talk of no gender norms, still wants these kind of traditional things. And they bump up with the anti-establishment position that she constantly talks about now. In other words, Marissa doesn't appreciate that a part of her wants the things that she is advocating against to some extent. She thinks it says something about her on a moral level to desire these traditional things, so she's pushing it away without dealing with the root of why she wants those things. Or maybe finding a guy like Bowden who is politically liberal and, I would argue, very masculine. A guy like Bowden would probably still be able to hold a more progressive view while also adhering to tradition and family in a way that Marissa wants. Bowden's the guy that she was with in the pods. We'll talk about him in a minute. It was like, when it came down to it, she had to decide between Ramses and Bowden. I wish she would have gone with friggin' Bowden, man. But let's even look at how Marissa envisions her wedding. She's the one who is like, no cis-het white officiant, and I want to deal with anything traditional in the wedding. I don't even want an aisle. I love how Ramses is like, we gonna ascend from the heavens or what, girl? What you talking about? It's the emphasis on non-traditional for non-traditional sake that I'm talking about. When I say you cannot make your whole personality about being anti-something, because then you're still controlled by it. And I think that's evident with Marissa. She fixates on rebelling against the traditional stuff so much, I think, because she feels locked out of it and she wants it. It's like a cognitive dissonance thing she's in. It's like she has a point to prove. And like I said, if she's not doing all this for Ramses's benefit, meaning she's not performing the anti-establishment hot chick cool girl thing, if she's not performing it, then it is confusion. She didn't grow up in a traditional household. Sounds like mom had a few men in and out of the picture and Marissa's dad left. It sounded like she dated some traditional men in real life and that didn't go well. So to me, it seems like she resents it so much because she hasn't had access to it and she deep down wants that. A lot of times people who rebel, they are rebelling against the things that they don't like within themselves, or because they feel, for whatever reason, that they're kind of like undeserving of that thing they're rebelling against. It's why you'll hear podcast bros obsess about women, but then scream and cry that they don't need or want them. Like, no, you're fixating on them. Your energy is going to them for a reason. You have weird, super serious, clingy, strange issues with women that you can't reconcile with. Marissa, I think, has some core wounding around the issue of love and family and clearly doesn't see how this is affecting her judgment on issues with men. And it's just as okay to want marriage and family as it is okay to not want it. But Marissa, again, seems confused about what she wants because she hasn't reconciled her values with her worldview, at least not enough to figure out how love and relationships fit into it. She wants a guy who says everything that indicates to her he's not a masculine man, but still wants the fibers of masculinity in there. And I'm not saying that guy doesn't exist, but Marissa won't be able to find one until she can be okay with the part of herself that maybe isn't as progressive as she would like to think. I think she's assigned herself some sort of moral failing for wanting these things, or at the very least, she is so hell-bent on proving she's so anti-establishment that she's losing sight of what matters to her in the long run when the rubber meets the road. As I said, Ramses, oh my back, didn't surprise me because I think he does believe what he says. And in this way, walks it like he talks it. walks it like I don't know. He means it is what I'm saying. And I just don't think Marissa does. It's like I said with the whole stay-at-home mom thing and the birth control thing. Marissa wants kids. She would have risked it all with Ramses to bring them forth, but she either doesn't like that side of herself and doesn't want to be honest about it, or she's hiding it because she's a people pleaser. The argument that Ramses and Marissa have that we're kind of inserted into the middle of regarding her lack of desire while she is PMSing and tired stood out to me for one reason and one reason only. It wasn't the whole, oh my God, I thought Ramses was better than this thing. It feels unrealistic to be up in arms about Ramses's kind of trying to understand Marissa in this moment. A woman's cycle lasts 30 days and we change throughout that entire cycle. They had just met. He probably just genuinely wanted to know what this looks like in the long run. Marissa had been incredibly sexual with him in the beginning. She kind of led with her sexuality in a lot of ways and was kind of ostentatious about it. It was probably just a side of her that he hadn't seen before. I don't think that's crazy. The fact that we're kind of plopped into the middle of this conversation though makes it hard for me to hang my hat on what I'm about to say, but I do think it's worth considering. If I had to guess, like I told you, the way that Marissa emotes is very over the top. And I doubt that that is only reserved for her happy, positive emotions. So we don't know exactly what happened, but as Ramses said, he would be exhausted by her in the long run. And I'm sure this is part of what he means. We don't really know what happened before the cameras came on, but he seems a little taken aback to me. And I think again, it's because Marissa's a little all over the place because I think she's kind of confused. But you know, in truth, the Marissa of it all, the emotions up and down, this is part of why I can make very strongly the case for Marissa being feminine cord, because she is so like, the feminine is like the ocean. It's like the moon. It's up and down. And Marissa is very those things. A truly masculine cord, strong, healthy man, this is not going to be a deal breaker for him. He's going to be a rock for you when you're falling apart that way. He is stable and grounded so that you get to experience the full breadth of your feelings and your emotions, because your masculine man can handle way more complicated things than your damn period. But Ramses isn't traditionally masculine per his admission at all. And also, like I keep saying, it's all about Ramses. I think what Marissa is also expressing is how tired she is. You know, she's not feeling well. She's commuting multiple hours to and fro for law school. She's filming the show. She's planning a wedding. She's tired, man. And hear you me, this whole house husband fantasy that she has with Ramses would have played out exactly the way that it's playing out in this conversation they're having. She's just not thought through the logistics of some of the things she says she wants. Like I said, the house husband thing would have been exactly like this, because like it or not, you go out to the world and work 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 hours a day, you will always still have work to come home to. So that's what she would have been signing up for. And I think this was an example of what that life would have looked like and how she actually probably wouldn't want that, in my opinion at least. And I wouldn't blame her for not wanting it either. It's more about how non-conforming they are than it is about like, this is a good lifestyle for us because it aligns with our inherent strengths and weaknesses. I don't think that would be the case here. I think Marissa would have eventually become very resentful of this. But Ramses is gonna stay chilling in his feminine energy, and Marissa would have to be and stay happy in her masculine energy to make this work. And clearly she already isn't at this time. Most women aren't. The masculine is about doing. Men are even built that way. You know, their hormone cycles only take 24 hours. Ours take 30 days. We are literally borderline different people any given week of the month. And PMS and period time in and of itself is super hard on a woman's body. We're just not built the same way, and that's totally fine. And I just feel like, again, this is why this whole outsourcing all of these complicated and very nuanced aspects of male-feminine dynamics to feminism is not going to save Marissa. Ostensibly, not many women at all. It's not going to be the answer here. You have to really stop and look at your values, what you want, what you're getting. Are you happy? Are you tired? But again, it doesn't seem like that's a lot of where they're approaching these very sensitive topics. from, where they're pushing it from, whatever. Ramses and Marissa think male and female behavior is as simple as patriarchy and gender norms. They're still running into the same problems everyone else does in these exact situations, but they think they're going to Twitter comment section speak their way through it, and they aren't. Especially not Marissa, like I said, who has not thought any of this through, apparently. Bowden was such a red flag. I do not get how Marissa could fumble the bag so hard. Ultimately, if you roll the playback, Marissa fell for Ramses. Okay, it's like Ramses and Bowden were her options. There's even a part where she's entertaining both of them, and she says that, oh my God, they're the same person. How will I choose? Oh my God. I couldn't agree less. I even remember texting my best friend when I was watching that episode, and I immediately wrote, Bowden and Ramses are not the same. In fact, if you roll the playback, it literally looks like Marissa ended up picking Ramses because they're moon placements or something like that. At that point, I was just rolling my eyes so far in the back of my head, I could see my cranium. It was insane. But let me tell you why they're not the same. Or first, let me tell you why they're similar. They're both pretty politically liberal from what I remember. I think Ramses is a little bit more on the liberal side of things than Bowden, if we're going to hold a yardstick up to it. But I think they both said enough of the right things to give Marissa the impression that they were going to be able to be in alignment on those things politically and as it pertained to their worldview. But here's the key difference. Bowden said that his family is from the Ukraine and that when Russia invaded, he immediately knew he needed to suit up and go fight. And not only that, when he called his family to tell them that's what he was going to do, his family said, oh, it makes me want to cry just talking about it because I thought it was so sweet. His family said that they knew he was going to do that. And that's because Bowden is super masculine man. Again, Marissa thinks masculinity boils down to like lifted trucks and Monster Energy drinks and football and crushing beer cans on their foreheads. Like it's such a superficial manifestation of that she is trying to avoid, that when she sees true healthy masculinity in her face, she doesn't realize how much of a gift to her future family with a man that would actually be. Does that make sense what I'm trying to say? Like this was such a green flag and I can't believe she didn't see it. Because like I said, healthy masculine men are beholden to things larger than themselves. If we look at Ramses, everything is about Ramses. But the minute there was an opportunity for Bowden to step in and protect, he took it. No questions asked. So that's what I mean when I say Bowden and Ramses were in no way the same. And I truly believe that had Bowden and Marissa matched up and fallen in love, they would have gotten married and been very happy together. I feel like a lot of Marissa's problems really just boil down to how confused I think she is. I think she has made this shift in worldview, you know, for whatever reason. There's a lot of deeper work underneath that needed to be done. And it just kind of seems a little bit like a copy and paste thing. That's why what I mean when I say it seems kind of superficial. The confusion and the people pleasing and the inability to tell when somebody doesn't want you. And then like the whole side of her that she seems kind of like a flip-flopper. Like in fact, Ramses said something about that. He recently did an interview and it sounds like prior to going on the reunion, Ramses and Marissa had kind of made like a pact, like I'm gonna defend you, you defend me. And when they got on the show, Marissa just defaulted to defending Hannah and making kind of a spectacle of herself. And not that I think Ramses is, again, there's a lot of things about him I don't really like, but I think he at least was astute enough to identify like, oh, Marissa will just switch up on you like this. And again, I think that's down to the people pleasing and the confusion. And outside of a lot of those things, Marissa's a catch. Like she's beautiful, she's accomplished, she's hardworking. Like there's a lot of things about her that should make it so that she can't even keep these men off of her. But because she's unable to kind of, like I said, reconcile and be honest with herself, stand up for herself when and where she needs to. She can't even stand up for herself against Hannah, clearly. Like she will be friends with someone who treats her like garbage. So clearly she'll put up with a man doing it. In fact, she said herself she would stay in an unhappy relationship for like 5 to 7 years before she would leave it. And you can tell that's like a badge of honor to her, but it's really actually sad. And if I was Ramses, I would have looked at that as like a red flag, to be honest with you. I actually had a few more notes and points to make about Marissa, but I think I've kind of touched on it enough. This relationship, in my opinion, was doomed from the start, mostly because Ramses was never going to get married, like I said. If anything, what I hope you single gals out there who I hope are watching this and learning from this, what I hope you take from this is, number one, do not let men just virtue signal in your face. Don't listen to what men say. Men like Ramses and men in general, especially if they can get women, they know what to say. Talk is cheap. Watch what they do. Know what you as a woman want. The full breadth of what you want as a woman. Be okay with that. Be totally comfortable with that within yourself. Don't feel guilty about it. Don't feel the need to explain it to anybody. Just know what it is. So then you can identify when a man doesn't want the same things, because it doesn't matter how fine he is and how many little Rufio from Hook style dreadlocks he has in his hair. Like, it doesn't matter if he doesn't want the same things as you. So many women will waste their whole lives going back and forth about a man trying to get on the same page. It ain't gonna change no man. You need to find the ones who want to roll with you and who want the same things that you want. And also, like with Marissa, you know, she needs to do a lot of healing before she gets in any more relationships. And I know I heard she's dating somebody now. I hope that she's kind of worked through all this stuff. But yeah, when it comes to love and relationships, I think, like I said, what we learned here is feminism is not going to save you. It didn't save Marissa, and it's probably not going to save a whole lot of other people. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but feminists don't have the monopoly on common decency and respect anyway. I don't know where anybody would get that idea to begin with, but my voice is going. I am looking forward to the Hannah and Nick video. It's going to be a little much. I'm not going to lie. It's probably the most spicy y'all are ever going to see me on this channel. I felt very, triggered isn't the word. I just felt like I got some smoke for Hannah and girls like her. They are disgusting to me. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thumbs up the video if you did. Subscribe if you are new here. Let me know your thoughts down below. I'm going to go to bed and I will catch you in the next one.